Ever feel like you're just wading through a sea of words?
Uh-huh. Yeah, I know that feeling.
But today, we're diving into the deep end.
That's right.
We're going to explore some advanced English vocabulary, 15 words to be exact.
Okay.
And they're all from this book, Test Your English Vocabulary.
Sounds like a challenge.
Well, it's not about memorizing definitions or anything like that.
Oh, good.
We're going to uncover their hidden depths and how these words connect to the bigger picture.
I like that. It's fascinating how these words can really unlock a deeper understanding of human behavior and communication and even our perception of time.
Absolutely. And to make it a little easier, we'll group our 15 words into themes.
Okay.
First up, the art of communication,
All right.
or sometimes the lack of it.
Right.
Let's start with loquacious. I'm sure you've met someone like this. They could talk a blue streak.
Yeah.
Holding court at a party, even if no one else gets a word in edgewise.
Oh, yeah, for sure. That's our loquacious friend.
Yeah.
It's interesting to contrast that with someone who's laconic. They might only say a few words, but those words carry weight. Think of a seasoned judge delivering a verdict. Just brief, to the point, no wasted syllables.
Oh, I like that example. Now, have you ever noticed how some people use big words to actually avoid clear communication?
All the time.
That's where obfuscate comes in.
Right.
It's like they're trying to build a wall of jargon to hide behind.
It happens a lot, especially in fields like, law or finance.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's unintentional. They're so used to speaking a certain way, they don't realize it's confusing to others.
Right.
But other times it's a deliberate tactic, make things seem more complex than they are.
Yeah, it's like they think if they use enough fancy words, no one will question what they're actually saying.
Right.
But we're smarter than that.
Absolutely.
We're going to see right through that obfuscation and get to the heart of the matter.
And sometimes the most straightforward language is the most powerful.
Okay, enough about communication. Let's talk about behavior. Our next group of words explores some interesting character types we all encounter.
Okay.
The sycophant, the ostentatious, and the austere. Let's start with the sycophant.
All right.
Oof. Just the word makes me cringe. You know that person who's always showering someone with insincere praise just to get on their good side?
Yeah, the classic yes man, always trying to curry favor. It's interesting to think about why someone might behave this way. Could it be a lack of confidence or maybe even a manipulative strategy to gain power?
Oh, it makes you wonder, right? Now let's swing to the opposite end of the spectrum with ostentatious.
Okay.
This is our friend who loves to flaunt their wealth or success.
Oh, yeah.
Think of the person who always has to have the latest designer clothes, the flashiest car, always name-dropping their fancy vacations.
Yeah, it's all about outward appearances, often masking a deeper need for validation. It makes you think about our society's obsession with status symbols and material possessions, doesn't it?
Totally. Now, in contrast to the ostentatious, we have the austere. This describes someone who lives a simple, unadorned life.
Right.
They're not interested in flashy displays or material wealth. Think of a minimalist who values experiences over possessions.
That's a fascinating counterpoint to the ostentatious lifestyle. In a world that constantly bombards us with messages about what we should want and need, the austere individual chooses a different path.
And I think the word propensity ties all three of these words together nicely.
How so?
Well, it refers to our natural tendencies or inclinations. We might have a propensity for flattery, for extravagance, for simplicity. These tendencies shape our behavior in all sorts of ways.
Exactly. We all have propensities, and recognizing them in ourselves and others can be key to understanding why we act the way we do.
Now let's shift gears and get a little philosophical. Our next group of words deals with time and the intangible.
Okay.
Ephemeral, ubiquitous, and the ineffable.
All right.
Have you ever experienced something beautiful but fleeting, like a stunning sunset that disappears in minutes?
Oh, yeah.
That's the essence of ephemeral.
It's about recognizing the beauty in transience, in those moments that are precious because they don't last. In a world that often values permanence and stability, the ephemeral reminds us to cherish the fleeting moments.
That's beautifully put. Now, on the flip side, we have ubiquitous, which describes something that's absolutely everywhere. It used to be rare to see someone using a smartphone, but now they're ubiquitous. You see them on every street corner and every cafe.
Yeah, it's incredible how quickly things can shift from novel to commonplace.
Right.
The ubiquity of technology, for example, has had a profound impact on our lives, for better or for worse.
And finally, we come to ineffable, which might be my favorite word of the bunch.
Oh, why is that?
Well, it describes something so profound, so awe-inspiring, that words simply cannot capture it. Have you ever had an experience like that, where language just failed you?
Absolutely. Sometimes the most profound experiences are the ones that transcend language, like the feeling of standing on a mountaintop overlooking this vast landscape or witnessing the birth of a child. These are moments that defy easy description.
It makes you realize the limitations of language, doesn't it? There are some things that words simply can't convey.
And yet that doesn't stop us from trying, from searching for the words that come closest to expressing the inexpressible.
Well said. Ready to tackle our next set of words.
Hit me with it.
This group focuses on actions and reactions.
Yeah.
Perfunctory, temerity, and recant. Let's start with perfunctory.
Okay.
You know those days when you're just going through the motions?
Yeah.
Doing something out of habit or obligation, but without any real heart?
Yeah.
That's perfunctory in action.
We all have those days, right? The key is to recognize when we're stuck in a rut and to make an effort to infuse our actions with more intention and meaning.
So true. Now let's talk about temerity.
Right.
This word is all about boldness, audacity, even a little bit of recklessness. It's about having the guts to do something daring, even if it goes against the grain.
Right.
Have you ever witnessed an act of pure temerity?
Yes, actually. I recall a time when a junior researcher presented this groundbreaking theory that challenged, the established thinking in the field.
Wow.
It was a bold move considering the potential backlash from senior colleagues.
Wow, that takes courage.
It does.
That makes you wonder, what's the line between temerity and foolishness? I guess it depends on the outcome, right?
I suppose it does. But sometimes those acts of temerity are the ones that lead to true innovation and progress.
And finally, we have recant.
Okay.
This is about taking back your words, admitting you were wrong, often in a public way.
Right.
It could be a politician retracting a statement, a scientist revising a theory, or someone simply owning up to a mistake.
It's a powerful act, recanting.
Yeah.
It requires humility, a willingness to acknowledge our fallibility. In a world where people are often afraid to admit they're wrong, recanting can be a sign of true strength and integrity.
It's about putting truth above ego, which can be a tough thing to do.
It can.
All right, ready to move on to our last group of words.
Let's do it.
This one's all about dreamers and realists, and it centers around the word quixotic.
Quixotic. Named after the idealistic knight, Don Quixote.
Right.
He's famous for tilting at windmills, mistaking them for giants. It's a wonderful example of how idealism and imagination can sometimes clash with reality.
Exactly. The word quixotic captures that blend of idealism, romanticism, and perhaps a touch of naivete.
Yeah.
It makes you think about the balance between chasing dreams and being grounded in reality.
It's a delicate balance, isn't it? On the one hand, we need idealism to inspire us, to push us beyond the limits of what seems possible. But on the other hand, we need pragmatism to navigate the complexities of the real world and make progress towards those ideals.
So true.
Yeah.
And sometimes those seemingly impossible quixotic goals can lead to unexpected breakthroughs.
Absolutely. It's about finding that sweet spot between dreaming big and taking practical steps to make those dreams a reality. What about you? Do you have any quixotic goals you're pursuing?
That's a great question. I'm going to have to ponder that one for a bit.
Okay, but in the meantime.
So, any thoughts on those quixotic goals? Did any come to mind during that little pause?
I was thinking about how even outlandish goals can spark innovation. Like, if no one had ever had that crazy idea to fly, well, we wouldn't have airplanes, right?
It's true. Sometimes it's not about reaching that exact vision, but what we discover on the way there.
Exactly. And speaking of journeys, it strikes me how the words we've been discussing, they're not just isolated units of meaning. They're part of a larger system.
Right.
A network of interconnected ideas.
That's like a constellation.
Oh, I like that.
Each star adds to the overall beauty and significance of the pattern.
It's true. We've been focusing on individual words, but it's the way we use them, the context, the nuances. That's what brings language to life.
Exactly. Take a word like austere, for instance.
Okay.
It can describe a monk's simple life, but also the starkness of a desert landscape. Or even like a government's harsh economic policies. Same word, but vastly different connotations depending on how it's used. It reminds me of how a single musical note can evoke different emotions based on the melody and the surrounding notes.
That's a fantastic analogy. And just like a composer carefully chooses notes to create a specific mood, skilled communicators select words to evoke feelings and convey precise meaning.
This makes me think about the importance of expanding our vocabulary, not just for intellectual reasons, but to become more effective communicators.
Right.
The more words we have at our disposal, the more precisely we can express ourselves.
It's like having a wider range of colors on an artist's palette. A limited palette can still create beautiful art, but imagine the possibilities when you have every shade and hue imaginable.
And not only can a rich vocabulary enhance our own communication, but it also helps us understand the nuances of what others are saying.
Absolutely. Think about how, politicians or advertisers use carefully chosen words to influence our opinions and behaviors.
It's true.
The more we understand the subtle ways language can be used, the better equipped we are to critically evaluate the messages we're bombarded with every day.
It's about becoming more aware of the power of words, both for good and for bad, but also appreciating the beauty and complexity of language,
Right.
how it can be used to inspire, to connect, to create art.
And that brings us back to the word ineffable.
Okay.
It describes those experiences that transcend language.
Right.
Even though some things defy description, that doesn't mean we should stop trying to express them.
I agree.
It's the effort, the reaching for meaning that enriches our understanding.
I love that perspective.
Yeah.
Even if we can't perfectly capture an experience in words, the act of trying can help us process it, make sense of it.
Absolutely.
And sometimes those struggles to find the right words lead to the most profound insights.
It's like those moments when a poet struggles to find the perfect rhyme or metaphor.
Yeah.
The result is often a line that's even more beautiful and evocative because of the effort that went into it.
Speaking of poetry, I'm curious, do you have a favorite word? One that you find particularly delightful or thought-provoking?
Oh, that's a tough one. There are so many. But one that's been on my mind lately is serendipity. I love the way it captures those unexpected delights that life throws our way.
Right?
Those moments of fortunate coincidence that lead to new discoveries or connections.
Serendipity is a beautiful word. It reminds me of how sometimes the most meaningful experiences happen when we're not actively seeking them out, when we're open to the unexpected twists and turns of life.
Exactly. It encourages us to embrace a sense of curiosity and wonder, to be open to the possibility that something amazing could be just around the corner.
And who knows, maybe our deep dive today will lead to some serendipitous discoveries for our listeners. They might stumble upon a new favorite word or make an unexpected connection between these words and their own lives.
I certainly hope so. After all, language is about so much more than just definitions. It's about expanding our perspectives, connecting with others, and exploring the richness of human experience.
Now, before we get too philosophical, I think it would be helpful to bring some of these words to life with some concrete examples.
Absolutely. It's one thing to understand a word in the abstract, but it's another to see how it's actually used in context.
For instance, we talked about obfuscate earlier.
Yeah.
I'm curious, how might you see that word used in, say, a legal setting?
Oh, that's an interesting one. In law, you might see obfuscate used to describe a defendant's attempts to hide assets or mislead the court. Or it could be used to criticize a lawyer's dense and confusing legal arguments.
So they're intentionally trying to make things difficult to understand.
It seems that way sometimes.
But as we've been saying, the more we understand these words and the ways they can be used, the better equipped we are to see through those attempts at obfuscation.
Exactly. And speaking of context, I think it'd be interesting to explore the etymology of some of these words.
Oh, yeah.
Trace their origins back to ancient languages and historical events.
I love that idea. Etymology can be like a detective story, uncovering hidden layers of meaning and revealing the fascinating journeys these words have taken over time.
For example, did you know that quixotic comes from the Spanish novel Don Quixote? It's amazing to think how a single literary character can inspire a word that becomes part of our everyday language,
That's true.
carrying with it the spirit of idealism and romanticism.
It's like these words become vessels, carrying centuries of history and cultural meaning within them.
And by delving into their etymology, we can unlock those hidden layers of meaning and gain an even deeper appreciation for the words we use.
It's like going on a linguistic treasure hunt. But instead of digging for gold, we're unearthing the stories and cultural influences that have shaped our language.
And those stories can be just as valuable as any treasure. They remind us that language is a living, breathing entity that's constantly evolving, shaped by the people who use it and the world around them.
This conversation has really sparked my curiosity.
Yeah, mine too.
I'm eager to delve even deeper into the world of language and explore more of its hidden treasures.
Me too. And I have a feeling our listeners are ready to continue this journey with us.
I think so too.
Should we take another short pause and come back for a final round of exploration?
That sounds like a perfect plan. We'll be back soon to wrap up our deep dive into advanced English vocabulary. Welcome back to our deep dive into advanced English vocabulary.
Glad to be back.
It's been such a fascinating journey exploring all these nuances and hidden depths of these words.
Yeah, I agree. It really makes you realize how much richness and complexity there is in language.
Absolutely. And we haven't even touched on like idioms and slang,
Oh, that's right.
which adds another layer of color and expressiveness to language.
Imagine trying to explain, like, kick the bucket or spill the beans to someone learning English for the first time.
Oh, that's a good one.
It'd be like trying to teach them a secret code.
Absolutely.
Oh.
And every language has its own unique set of idioms and colloquialisms, right?
Right. It really reflects the history and the culture and even the sense of humor of a language.
Makes you realize how much language is tied to our identity,
Yeah.
both as individuals and as members of a particular community.
And it highlights the importance of, like, cultural exchange and understanding.
Yeah.
The more we learn about other languages and their nuances, the more we expand our own worldview.
Now, before we wrap up, I wanted to touch on something we haven't really talked about yet, the role of grammar and syntax in effective communication.
Ah, yes, grammar and syntax. While we've been focusing on individual words, it's the way we arrange those words, the structure of our sentences. That's what allows us to convey complex thoughts and ideas.
It's like building a house, right?
Yeah.
You need strong, well-crafted bricks, but you also need a solid framework to hold them together.
Precisely. Grammar and syntax provide that framework. They ensure that our message is clear and coherent and easy to understand.
It's amazing to think about how even a slight change in word order or punctuation can completely alter the meaning of a sentence.
A misplaced comma can lead to all sorts of ambiguity and confusion.
So true. And that brings us to another important point, the importance of being precise and intentional with our language choices.
Especially in written communication where we don't have, like, the tone of voice or body language to help convey our meaning.
Exactly. It makes you realize how much responsibility we have as communicators to use language carefully and thoughtfully.
And it highlights the importance of editing and revising our work to make sure our message is clear, accurate, and free of errors.
Well said. Now, as we come to the end of our deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a few key takeaways.
Okay.
First and foremost, language is constantly evolving.
It's true. New words are being coined all the time. Old words take on new meanings.
It's like a river,
Yeah.
always flowing and changing shape.
Which means we need to be lifelong learners. Always curious about language and how it's being used in the world around us.
I also want to encourage our listeners to embrace the power of language,
Absolutely.
to see it as a tool for connection, for creativity, for making a difference.
Words have the power to inspire, to inform, to persuade, to heal.
But they can also be used to harm, to deceive, to manipulate. So it's crucial that we use them responsibly and ethically.
Couldn't agree more.
And finally, language is a source of endless fascination and delight. There's always something new to discover, some hidden meaning to uncover, some unexpected connection to make.
That's one of the most beautiful things about it.
So keep exploring, keep learning, keep playing with words, and most importantly, never stop being curious about the incredible power of language.
Well said. Until next time, keep diving deep into the world of words. Okay, have you ever felt like native English speakers are just talking way too fast?
Yeah.
It's like they're speaking some kind of secret code or just mumbling.
Right.
You shared a masterclass with me about speaking and understanding faster English, so we are diving into that today.
Yeah, and I think it'll be great to not just figure out how to understand rapid-fire English, but also how to speak it more naturally and fluently ourselves.
For sure, for sure. I saw in the source material, they talk about this shadowing technique. I'm really curious to learn more about that. But first, like, why does English sound so fast to non-native speakers in the first place?
I think it's a few different things all coming together at once. One big thing is connected speech,
Okay.
which is basically how words kind of blend together. Like,
Yeah.
instead of what do you want? It sounds more like wadaya wanna.
Yeah. So it's not that the words themselves are faster. It's just they all kind of,
They mush together.
yeah, they get mashed together, yeah. And then there's all those contractions too, right?
Absolutely. Contractions and reductions are everywhere in natural English. And I think they definitely add to the speed. Things like, going to do, becoming gonna, or want to, shrinking to wanna.
Yeah.
It's like we like to be lazy with our words, but it makes it hard for people to understand.
Yeah. No, what is this schwa thing I keep hearing about?
Yeah, so the schwa,
What is that?
the schwa is a tricky one. It's like this chameleon vowel that like changes based on the sounds that are around it.
Oh, okay.
It's this really unstressed, kind of like mumbly sound you hear in words like, the classic example is banana. It's not banana, it's more like bunana.
Yeah.
It just becomes this like lazy sound.
So like the schwa, it can pop up in any word then.
Yeah, yeah.
Not just, banana is the one everyone uses.
It can even happen a bunch of times in the same word. Like think of the word photography.
Yeah.
It's not photography, it's more like photography.
Oh, wow. Okay, yeah.
The schwa can really change how a word sounds.
It really is like a secret code. I think an audio example would be really good here.
Yeah.
The masterclass actually gives an example of, I should have told you earlier, both at kind of a slower speed and a native speed.
Okay.
So let's listen to that.
Sounds good.
Audio plays, I should have told you earlier, followed by, I should have told you earlier. Yeah. It's crazy.
It does.
It's almost like two different languages. I can totally see why this is a challenge.
Yeah. But what's cool is that you don't necessarily need to hear every single sound
Right.
to get what's being said. Our brains are actually really good at filling in the missing information.
That's good to know because, yes, some of that is, like, impossible to understand. Okay, so how do we train our ears to be better at, like, decoders of all this?
Well, one really good way is to practice something called chunking.
Okay.
And basically, instead of getting stuck on each individual word, you try to hear phrases as like units.
Oh.
It's kind of like how we read, right? We're not focusing on each letter. We group the letters into words.
Yeah.
And then phrases.
Can you give me, like, an example?
Yeah, sure. Imagine someone's like, do you want to grab some lunch later?
Yeah.
If you try to pick out every single sound,
Yeah.
it's just a jumble, right?
Yeah.
But if you kind of chunk it together in your mind, do you want to grab some lunch later?
Right.
It becomes way more clear.
Oh, yeah.
So you kind of get the big idea.
Yeah, you're listening for the key idea and not every little word.
Exactly.
Cool, cool. That kind of leads into the next thing, right? About listening in layers.
It does, yeah.
This sounds very Zen-like.
It is. It is. It's like, think about listening to a song for the first time. You're not going to catch all the words,
Right.
all the lyrics, all the nuances right away, right?
Yeah.
Same thing with English.
So we're listening to the same thing multiple times.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and what are the layers?
Well, so on the first pass, you're just listening for the gist. Who's talking? What are they talking about?
Right.
And then on the second listen, you try to pick out keywords that'll give you more context.
Okay.
And then on the third listen, that's when you can really zero in on like the tricky bits,
Okay.
like the connected speech, maybe those contractions you couldn't quite pick out the first time.
Okay, it's kind of like peeling back an onion, right?
Exactly.
You get a little more information every time.
You got it.
Cool. We actually have a dialogue example in the masterclass that we can use to try this
Perfect.
audio plays. Hey, do you want to grab some coffee? Yeah, but let me finish this first. Cool, I'll meet you in 10.
Okay.
So how would we use this layered listening for this little coffee shop conversation?
Okay, so on that first listen, you're getting, okay, two people are going to get coffee.
Yeah.
Easy.
Easy.
Then on that second layer, you might pick out keywords like coffee, maybe finish this, and then like 10 minutes.
Okay.
So now you're getting a better picture of what's going on.
Right.
And then finally, on the third listen, you can really zoom in. Like, okay, do you want it? Let me.
Yeah.
How are they using those contractions and reductions?
Okay, yeah, that makes it much less intimidating,
Yeah.
breaking it down like that. Now, what about speaking faster? How do we do that without sounding like,
Yeah.
some kind of robot?
Like a robot reading a dictionary.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. Well, this masterclass talks a lot about sounding natural and fluent, not just talking faster.
Right.
Like you said, we don't want to sacrifice clarity just to sound fast.
Yeah, so are there specific techniques for this?
Well, remember all those contractions and reductions we talked about?
Yeah.
Those are really important for speaking fluently, too.
So instead of saying, like, I'm going to the store, I should say, I'm going to go to the store.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. Oh.
And it might feel a little weird at first,
It does.
but I promise it just makes your English sound smoother and more effortless.
Okay. But how do we actually get used to doing that?
Right. Well, that's where that shadowing technique comes in.
Okay.
So you are going to be like a vocal chameleon. You listen to a native speaker.
Yeah. Say a phrase or a sentence. You pause it, and then you try to repeat exactly what they said,
Okay.
matching their pronunciation, intonation, and speed.
So like, what are you doing? I should say more like, what you doing?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And you can start slow, and then as you get more comfortable, you can speed it up.
That's cool. Are there any other techniques we can use?
Yeah. Another one is linking. So like native speakers, we just do it naturally, but it's something that you might have to practice consciously if you're learning.
Okay.
So like, for instance, not at all often becomes not at all.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So the tan sound from not blends with that vowel sound of at.
Oh, that's so subtle. Wow.
It is.
I want to try a little fast reading challenge, can I?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay, so the source material has the sentence, would you like to go to the movies later?
Yeah.
How would a native speaker actually say that?
Probably something like, would ya? Like, go to the movies later.
Wow, that's a mouthful. Okay, so I'm noticing would you becomes would ya, tutu is like ta, and the like disappears before movies.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's all about those smooth transitions.
Yeah. Okay. I can already tell I need to practice that one. We've been practicing here in this nice, perfect little world, right?
Right.
How do we take this into the real world where there's all kinds of accents and people talking at all different speeds?
That is the real challenge, right? Because the real world is full of all these variations, different accents, slang, speaking styles.
Yeah.
It's really like taking what you learned in the classroom and then...
throwing yourself into the deep end.
Exactly.
Yeah, I remember that feeling.
Yeah.
It was, like, scary. So what advice does the masterclass have for us for bridging that gap?
Well, I mean, really, it's about exposure and practice.
Okay.
The more you immerse yourself in the language, the more prepared you'll be to handle those real-world variations.
What are some good ways to get that real-world practice?
Well, they talk about watching TV shows and movies. You can start with the subtitles on to get the gist, and then challenge yourself.
Right.
Turn the subtitles off. See how much you could understand.
Yeah, I find even watching with English subtitles, like, helps me pick up stuff I might not have noticed otherwise.
Yeah, for sure. And then there's podcasts.
Okay.
Which are great because you can adjust the speed.
Right.
You can start slow, work your way up.
What about actually talking with native speakers?
Well, that's the best practice you can get, right?
Right.
Find language exchange partners, maybe join some groups online, or even, if you're brave enough, strike up conversations with people you meet.
I remember I was so scared to talk to native speakers when I was learning English.
Yeah.
But I realized, like, pretty quickly, most people are really patient and they appreciate the effort you're making.
Yeah, absolutely.
So it really is about just building that confidence and not being afraid to, like, mess up.
For sure. Don't be afraid to ask people to slow down or repeat themselves.
Yeah.
People are happy to help.
Yeah. So we really need to embrace that messiness, right? It's going to be messy. It's not going to be perfect.
Absolutely.
Now, the masterclass has one final challenge for us before we wrap up this first part of our deep dive.
Okay.
They want us to imagine we're hanging out with friends, and they ask, hey, deal up for a movie tonight.
Fun.
Okay, I'm ready for this challenge. Let's hear it.
Okay.
Audio plays. Hey, you're up for a movie tonight. Dunno. What's playing? That new sci-fi one looks cool. All right, let me check the show times.
Oh, casual, fast English.
So what techniques are we hearing in this?
Okay, well, right away we hear that contraction, ya,
Right.
instead of you, and then what's playing. It combines like what is and playing into one little chunk.
I noticed they're saying do know instead of don't know, and then let me instead of let me.
It's amazing how those little things make such a big difference.
Yeah, it's like a little puzzle.
It is.
All these pieces, you can even hear that linking, like looks cool becomes looks cool. That's so cool. Okay, so now the challenge is to imagine how we would respond.
Yes.
Using everything we've talked about.
Exactly, and there's no one right answer.
Right.
It's about using what you've learned and seeing how you can apply it to this conversation.
So we're leaving you with that challenge for now, dear listener. How would you respond to this invitation to go to the movies? We'll explore this more in the next part of our deep dive.
You know, it's crazy to think about how all these like tiny little things, the contractions, the schwa sound linking, it all adds up to make English sound so fast.
Right.
But at the end of the day, like, it's not really about speed, is it?
No, not really. It's more about understanding each other.
Right, being able to communicate.
Exactly.
I think that's easy to forget when you get so caught up in like the rules and the technical stuff.
It's easy to get bogged down in that.
Yeah.
And forget why we're even learning the language.
Totally. I like that this masterclass really focuses on that, like the human element of language. It does. It gives some good advice about how to turn all this stuff we're talking about into like real fluency.
That's what I'm curious about, because I feel like I've hit walls so many times where I'm just like, I'm not getting any better. Like, what's the secret to getting over those plateaus?
Well, It's not really a secret. I think a lot of people they don't do it,
Yeah.
but it's practice.
Yeah.
It's consistent practice.
Okay, so not just like cramming.
Right, not just cramming a bunch of words and grammar rules,
Right, yeah.
but really making it a habit.
Okay, yeah. So what would a good practice routine look like? Say I'm like just starting out.
Well, I mean, even if you could just do like 15, 20 minutes a day of focused listening.
Okay.
That's huge. It could be podcasts, TV shows, whatever you enjoy.
Right.
You could even just listen to conversations happening around you.
Right. That's such a good, like, easy tip, you know?
It is. It is.
You don't need anything special for that.
Just like go to a coffee shop, listen to people talking.
Yeah. Exactly. What about for speaking practice?
Speaking practice is a little tougher.
Yeah.
Because you have to actually,
Find someone to talk to.
Yeah.
Right?
But there's a lot of groups online.
Uh-huh.
Language exchange apps and things like that.
Yeah.
You could even record yourself speaking and then listen back.
I used to do that.
Yeah.
It's so helpful.
Right. You catch all these little mistakes.
It is a little cringy, though.
It is. It is.
Yeah.
But it's like having your own little language coach.
It is. And you said it earlier, too. It's okay to make mistakes.
Absolutely. That's how we learn.
That's how we learn, yeah.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the shadowing technique. We kind of touched on it earlier. Can you explain a little bit more about how that works and why it's so good?
It's basically karaoke for language learning.
Okay.
You listen to a native speaker,
Yeah.
try to repeat exactly what they're saying,
Okay.
matching their rhythm, intonation, everything.
So it's like a workout for your mouth?
It is. Getting it to do all those weird sounds.
Exactly. And you could do it with anything.
Oh, okay.
Like a podcast, a song,
Oh, cool.
a scene from a movie.
That sounds fun. What are some tips for making practice in general more interesting?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of times people think of it as a chore, right?
Yeah.
But I think it's important to find stuff that you're actually interested in.
Right.
Like if you love to cook,
Yeah.
watch cooking shows in English. If you're a sports fan,
Yeah.
listen to sports commentary.
It's so true. Like when it's something I like, it feels like I'm like not even trying.
Right, because you're actually paying attention.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, just find ways to connect your interests with language learning.
Right. It shouldn't be boring.
No, it should be fun.
Yeah. Even when we are enjoying it, I feel like we all hit those like plateaus.
Yeah.
How do we deal with that?
Well, I think it's important to remember that progress isn't always like a straight line, You're going to have times when you feel like you're rocketing forward and times where you feel like you're just stuck.
Yeah, like going backwards almost.
Right. And that's totally normal.
Yeah.
But you can't give up.
Right.
Just keep practicing and trust the process.
It's like when you're working out, right?
It is.
You hit those plateaus. It's like, I'm doing all this and nothing's happening.
Right. But just like with fitness, consistency is key.
Okay.
Just keep at it.
And celebrate those like little wins, right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Because it's easy to get focused on this big like end goal.
Yeah.
And forget how far you've come.
Right. It's like looking at old pictures of yourself like, oh my God.
Exactly. You make so much progress.
Yeah. And that actually brings us to like confidence. Right.
It does.
Because when you can understand and be understood, you feel more confident. You feel more like able to.
You're not just a passive observer. You're an active participant.
Yeah. A whole new world opens up, basically.
It does. It does.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of technical stuff.
We have.
And resources and even like the emotional and social benefits of being fluent. I know this masterclass has one last challenge for us before we wrap up this section of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready.
So, remember that movie night situation we talked about?
Yeah.
Our friends invited us to go to a movie.
Yeah, they asked you up for a movie tonight.
And we heard all the back and forth about,
Yep.
What's playing and everything.
What time? Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so now the challenge is, what would you say? There's no script this time.
No, I like it.
Just like, what would you say?
It's like they're saying, okay, here are all the tools. Now you go.
Exactly, yeah.
Make something beautiful.
Yeah.
It's your turn.
Yeah. And I think that's what this whole deep dive is about, right?
It is, yeah.
It's not about memorizing.
Yeah.
It's about being able to actually use the language.
It's about empowering you to use the language.
Yeah, yeah. So, dear listener, that's the challenge for you. Put yourself back in that situation.
Yep.
What would you say? How would you use these techniques we've talked about?
Yeah, don't overthink it.
Yeah.
Just like, what's your gut reaction?
Yeah.
Have fun with it.
I love that. Okay, I'm going to try.
Okay.
So if my friends asked if I was up for a movie, I might say, yeah, totally. What are we thinking of watching?
Perfect.
I'm using a contraction.
You are.
I'm keeping it casual.
You are.
And I'm expressing enthusiasm.
Yes, you are.
I love it. And I'm already feeling more confident just thinking about,
I love that.
using all this stuff.
Yeah, and that's what it's all about, right, is finding your own voice.
Yeah.
And just being comfortable.
Awesome. So, dear listener, we want you to find your voice.
Yes.
Experiment, try new things, push yourself out of your comfort zone a little bit.
And remember, fluency is not like an end point.
Right.
It's an ongoing journey.
It is, yeah.
Full of ups and downs, and it's all about connection,
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Connecting with other people.
Okay, I think this is a good place to take a quick break, and then we'll come back and wrap up our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English. I'm still thinking about that movie night challenge.
Yeah.
I like how it makes us actually, use what we learned.
It is. It's a good way to, bridge the gap between the ideas and actually putting it into practice.
Totally. It reminds us this isn't just about, memorizing rules. It's about, using language to actually talk with people.
Right. Language is about connection.
Yeah. This deep dive has been awesome.
Yeah.
Can we do a quick recap of what we talked about?
Yeah, for sure.
Just to make sure I've got all the key takeaways.
Okay, well, I think the first thing to remember is that speed is just one part of being fluent.
Okay.
You don't want to just talk fast.
Yeah.
You got to be clear.
Yeah.
And you got to sound natural.
Right. So it's a balance.
Exactly.
Okay. And one way to do that is using all those contractions and reductions.
Yeah, definitely. Those are super important.
Yeah.
They really make your English flow.
Now, what about chunking?
Oh, yeah, chunking's huge.
Yeah.
Training yourself to hear those chunks of words instead of every single word.
It's like we're upgrading our brains.
It is. It's like a software update.
Yeah.
For your ears.
That's a good way to put it. And then we have that layered listening approach. First the gist, then the keywords, then all that subtle details.
Right, like connected speech and all that.
Okay, and then for speaking, we've got that shadowing technique.
Ah, yes, shadowing.
That was really cool. Having a pronunciation coach in your ear.
Exactly. And you can do it with anything.
Right. Any material that interests you.
Yeah.
So we've got all the tools. Now what's the secret to putting this all together? What's the magic formula?
Well, again, it's not really a secret. It's consistent practice.
Oh.
Finding things that you enjoy.
Right. It should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah. It shouldn't feel like a chore.
Totally. Because when it's fun, you actually want to do it.
Exactly. And you'll learn faster that way, too.
Yeah. So, find things that you're into, movies, podcasts.
Yeah. Or connect with other people who are learning.
Yeah.
You can all practice together.
Now we all know fluency isn't you don't just arrive there one day.
No, it's a journey.
Yeah.
With lots of twists and turns.
Yeah. And we're going to mess up along the way.
Oh, for sure.
You just got to, keep going.
Absolutely. Celebrate the wins and learn from the mistakes.
I think that's a great way to wrap up our deep dive.
Yeah.
So, dear listener, hopefully this has given you some new ideas for how to take your English to the next level.
Yeah. Keep practicing and keep exploring.
And keep connecting with people.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, language is about connecting.
So true. That's it for our deep dive into speaking and understanding fast English.
Thanks for joining us.
We'll see you next time. Okay, but really, think about it for a sec. How often are we all using words that kind of, sabotage what we're trying to say? Little sneaky words making us sound less confident.
It happens more than you think. And it's wild how these tiny words can really affect how people see us.
Yeah.
Especially at work, right?
Totally. Which is why we're diving into this article, 11 words you should stop saying immediately. We're not just going to list them, though. We're breaking down why they're bad, and most importantly, giving you swaps so you can sound more powerful.
Think of it like upgrading your communication one word at a time.
First up, the word just. Ugh, I'm so guilty of this. You're writing an email and it's I just wanted to follow up, or just a quick question. Why does just make us sound so unsure?
It's subtle, but just makes your request smaller, almost like you're apologizing for it. Imagine waiting to hear back about a project and you're I just wanted to follow up on the proposal. What's that say?
Makes me sound hesitant, like I shouldn't even be asking.
Right. But what if you just said, I'm following up on the proposal? It's tiny, but you sound way more confident taking charge.
No more tiptoeing, you own it.
Exactly. And that shift can change how your message lands big time.
Okay, another tricky one. Actually, this feels like a trap almost.
Oh, it can be. Actually, often slips out when we're correcting someone or giving a different view. But imagine someone's actually, I think we should go a different way. How's that feel?
Like they're shutting down my idea before even thinking about it?
It can sound condescending, even if they just meant to add to the discussion. Taking out actually makes it more collaborative. Like instead of, actually, I have a question about that, you could say, I'm curious about this part.
More like inviting a chat, not shutting it down.
Perfect. Still saying your thing, but it keeps the flow going, respectfully.
Now, maybe this one feels like almost self-sabotage, wouldn't you say?
It is. You wouldn't use maybe if you were really sure of your idea, so why hedge?
I guess it's like we're scared to commit to our thoughts, you know?
And that hesitation can hurt your credibility, especially at work. Decisiveness often equals competence. Instead of, maybe we should consider this. We should consider this. Hear the difference.
It's like you're leading, not just dipping a toe in.
Right. Showing confidence in your idea, inviting others to follow.
Okay, this one bugs me. Saying sorry when there's no need. Why do we apologize for, like, existing, basically?
It's a thing, isn't it? Do we really need to apologize for asking a question or taking up space or just saying what we think?
No way. And all that apologizing can actually make us seem, I don't know, smaller, less confident.
You're right. And the key is, there are way better ways to say things. Instead of, sorry to bother you, try thanks for your time, or I appreciate your input.
Shows respect without sounding unsure. It's like shifting from apologizing for existing to being grateful for their attention.
Small but powerful, right. Changes how you come across.
All right, another confidence killer, I think. It's everywhere, but it makes what we say weaker.
It's a verbal tick for lots of us. But think about how much stronger it is without it. Like, I think this is the best option versus this is the best option. Huge difference.
You're right. It's a fact now, not just an opinion, maybe.
And sure, sometimes you want to say it's your view, not like universal truth. But even then, there are better ways.
So instead of, I think, you could say, from my analysis, or based on what I've seen.
Exactly. You're owning your view, but it's more, I don't know, sophisticated.
Like leveling up your communication, swapping out the wishy-washy stuff for strong, impactful language.
And that's what this deep dive's about, right? Giving you the tools to communicate clearly, confidently, like you mean it. It's crazy, right? How even little changes to how we talk can make us, like, more confident overall. When we pick words that sound sure, it changes how others see us, but also how we see ourselves.
That's like telling your own brain, hey, I got this.
Totally. And speaking of believing in yourself, let's talk about can't. This one messes with us, keeps us from, doing our best.
Oh, yeah, can't. It's so easy to just say, I can't do this, especially when something's hard.
It's almost automatic, but it's a trap. When we say can't, we're basically stopping ourselves from growing, from changing.
Like we're putting limits on ourselves before even trying.
And honestly, we can do way more than we think we can. So what if instead of I can't, we say something, well, more powerful? Like, I haven't learned this yet, or I'm still figuring it out.
I like that. It's not saying you'll never do it, just that you're on the way there.
Exactly. And that small change can help you stay motivated, keep going when things get tough.
It reminds me of that saying, whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. What we say really does affect what we believe.
So true. So let's pick words that lift us up, both when we talk to ourselves and to others.
Okay, almost done with the list, but a couple more big ones. Let's do but and. I mean, they're not bad words, but how we use them matters, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's all about the situation and what you're trying to say, but often goes after something positive and it kind of ruins it.
It's like giving a compliment and then taking it back. You did great on that presentation, but I think you could have been more engaging. Oof.
Exactly. The but erases the good stuff you just said.
Yeah.
Makes people feel, I don't know, discouraged.
So what's better?
And swap out the but for and it's way more constructive. Like, you did great on that presentation, and I think we can work together to make it even more engaging.
You're not just criticizing, you're helping. It's about fixing things, not just pointing out what's wrong.
And that's such a good attitude to have, right? At work, anywhere.
All right. Got to address the big one. Literally, people misuse this all the time. It's almost funny how wrong it gets.
Yeah, it's become this word people use to emphasize stuff, even when it's not actually true.
Yeah.
But using it wrong makes you sound less credible, like you don't know what you're talking about.
I think it shows how important it is to use the right words. When we choose carefully, we say what we mean more clearly, and it has more impact.
Couldn't agree more. It's about respecting how powerful words are and using them to your advantage. So let's all try to use literally, correctly, and really all words thoughtfully.
Okay, before we go on, gotta mention kind of and sort of again. They seem small, but they weaken what you're trying to say.
Oh, they're so wishy-washy. They make you sound uncertain, like you don't really care. Imagine telling your boss, I'm kind of excited about this new project. Not exactly inspiring, huh?
Sounds like you'd rather be doing something else.
Exactly. So instead of that, let's use words that are, well, stronger, more definite, like I'm intrigued by that, instead of I'm sort of interested, more specific, more interesting.
And it shows you're really paying attention, involved in the conversation.
Right on. Now, sticking with words that fill space but don't add anything, let's talk about like. It's supposed to connect with people, but it can actually make you sound less smart.
It's so ironic. It's like people say like all the time, especially when they're nervous.
But you know what's even better? Just pausing.
Yes. Silence is way more effective than filling the space with, nothing.
Gives your brain a second to think, so you can choose better words.
And it makes you sound more thoughtful, calm, which can be really powerful.
And while we're at it, how about, this one comes up when we're not sure if the other person's getting what we're saying. Like we need them to agree with us.
It's like we're doubting ourselves, even though we're the ones with the ideas.
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
You know what you're talking about. You can explain it clearly. Trust yourself. Let that confidence show.
That's a good point. We don't always need someone to tell us we're right. We can just own it.
Exactly. Now, one last thing about how our language affects how we interact with people. We've talked about specific words, but it's also about the vibe we give off.
Right. Sometimes it's not just the words, but how we say them.
Totally. Think about, I have to do this versus I get to do this. It's just a different way of looking at it, but it changes how you feel about it.
It's like turning something you have to do into something you want to do.
It's about feeling like you have control, even when things are tough or boring.
I love that. We really can choose how we see things just by how we talk about them.
And that's kind of the main point of all this. It's not about banning certain words. It's about being aware of what we say, picking words that show what we believe, make us feel confident, and help us really connect with people.
Honestly, I'm kind of fired up now to use all this stuff. It's amazing how just changing a few words can make such a difference in, everything.
It really shows you how powerful language is, right? We don't always realize how much what we say shapes our whole experience.
So for our listeners, what's one thing they can do today to start using all this?
Good question. I think the best way is to just pick one thing, one word from our list that, stood out to you. Maybe you use it too much or you think it's holding you back.
Okay, let's say I pick just. What then?
Try to. Completely stop using it for a week. Mm-hmm. Pay attention to when you want to say it in emails, conversations, even just thinking to yourself.
Like a little challenge? See what happens when you change just one word.
Exactly. I bet you'll be surprised. See how people react when you're more direct, more confident. And notice how it makes you feel. You might find that not saying just makes you sound more sure of yourself. And D actually makes you more confident.
So it's like teaching your brain to use better words by default.
Yeah. And the more you do it, the easier it gets. It's like exercise. The more you use those confident words, the more natural they'll feel.
Makes sense. So it's not about being perfect right away. It's about getting better over time.
Exactly. And hey, you don't have to do this alone. Tell a friend about the episode or a coworker and help each other out. You could even make it fun. Point out when someone slips up.
That's a good idea. It's always easier to stick with something when you have someone to do it with.
And who knows, maybe you'll start this chain reaction of confident communication at work everywhere.
What a great thought. Well, we've definitely given everyone a lot to think about today. It's been, really interesting and inspiring. I feel like I have a whole new understanding of how to use words to be more confident and clear.
It's been great diving into this with you. And to everyone listening, remember, what we say really matters. Mm-hmm. So let's choose our words carefully. And until next time, stay curious, stay confident, and keep on learning.
All right. So are you ready to really boost your English fluency? I mean, take it to that next level.
Ooh, I like where this is going.
Well, today we're diving deep into phrasal verbs.
Those are essential.
They really are. They're the secret code to sounding really natural,
yes.
Especially if you're already pretty comfortable with the basics of English.
Right. You got to get those phrasal verbs down.
Exactly.
And what I think is so fascinating about them is the way they kind of weave themselves into just everyday English.
Yeah, it's like you can't escape them, can you?
No, you can't. And they're not just about casual chit-chat.
Right.
They pop up everywhere. We'll see them in like, professional settings, travel scenarios, even when you're talking about like learning new things or improving yourself.
Yeah, you're right. They're everywhere.
They're everywhere.
We've got 25 essential phrasal verbs to unpack today, and I'm telling you, you'll be surprised by how their meanings can shift depending on the situation.
Yeah, it's true. It's like sometimes the same phrasal verb can have so many different meanings.
Right.
If like they're these little chameleons
Right.
blending in, adding that extra layer of meaning.
Subtle mastery, huh?
Yes. That's what sets apart a fluent speaker.
For sure, for sure. So let's start with those everyday conversations, the ones we have all the time. Like I'm thinking about like turn up and run into. They seem so simple on the surface.
Right. Yeah.
But I bet there's more to them than meets the eye.
Oh, absolutely. You're absolutely right. Take turn up, for example.
Okay.
If someone says he didn't turn up for the meeting, like that kind of has a negative connotation to it,
Yeah.
right?
You're like, where were you?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Implies a lack of responsibility. Maybe even like a little bit of disrespect.
For sure, for sure.
But, if you're at a party and the volume's too low, you might say, can you turn up the music?
Yeah, that's true.
Same verb, totally different vibe, right?
It is. It's like the context around the phrasal verb, it like colors it, gives it that extra layer of meaning.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And run into kind of has that element of chance, like surprise. If you say, I ran into an old friend, that paints a much more vivid picture than just saying like, oh, I met an old friend.
Right. I see what you mean.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, definitely. You can like almost feel the surprise and joy in that encounter.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's shift gears a little bit here. Let's talk about the work and business category.
Okay.
And I noticed in this section, look into and come up with. These are verbs you'd probably hear, in an office setting.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Maybe in a boardroom, who knows?
Yeah. Boardroom, meeting, like these verbs are all about like, clarity and action in a professional setting.
Right, being efficient.
Efficient. Yeah. If you say, we need to look into this issue that like sounds a lot more, proactive. It's more decisive than just saying like, we need to investigate.
Yeah, for sure.
Right. And come up with, that one's all about that creative problem solving.
Yeah, that's a good one.
That's a good one.
I like that. So it's almost like these phrasal verbs cut through all the fluff.
Yes.
They just get straight to the point, which is so important at work.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right. Especially in a fast-paced environment.
Yeah. And imagine you're in a meeting.
Oh, yeah.
And you're struggling to express those key actions.
It would be painful.
Yeah. So mastering these, can make you a much more effective communicator at work.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, so let's get ready to explore the world a little bit. Travel and socializing. When it comes to this, I thought about pick up and drop off.
Yes.
They're essential for getting around, making plans,
Absolutely. I mean, think about that classic travel phrase. Can you pick me up from the airport?
It's so common.
It's so common.
Yeah.
It's direct. It's clear. It gets the message across.
Effortless.
Yeah, effortless. Yeah. And drop off too. Like I'll drop you off at the station on my way. Makes, coordinating plans so much smoother.
Yeah, super smooth.
Super smooth.
What's interesting about those two is it highlights the social aspect of language,
I know.
If you offer to pick someone up or drop them off, it's more than just the action, It kind of conveys a sense of, I don't know, like helpfulness, consideration.
Right, you're going out of your way for them a little.
Exactly. Okay, and speaking of subtle shifts in meaning, check-in. That one seems to have like multiple personalities.
Oh, it does, doesn't it?
Depending on the context.
It does.
Right.
You've hit the nail on the head there. Check in at a hotel, like that's a formal procedure, right? Yeah. But if you say check in with a friend, that's just casual.
Totally different.
Totally different. It implies like that you care.
Right. You're just seeing how they're doing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a perfect example of how, phrasal verbs just adapt and evolve, They just change.
Yes, they do.
Depending on the situation. All right, it's time to level up our skills even more. Learning and self-improvement. I'm intrigued by catch up on and figure out, they seem to like capture the essence of personal growth.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, they really do. Catch up on, that kind of implies that you're making an effort, right?
Yeah.
Like a conscious effort to, stay current, expand your knowledge.
Yeah, it's like active learning.
Yes. And figure out has that problem-solving vibe, right?
It's like that aha moment.
Yes. It's about like overcoming challenges, pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone.
Which is like part of personal development, right?
Absolutely. Embracing those aha moments.
Yeah.
And recognizing that, learning it's a journey.
It never ends.
It never ends. What's fascinating is how these verbs kind of empower you to like talk about your learning journey.
Yeah, to actually articulate it.
Yes.
Yeah, I like that.
So thinking about those learning goals, is there a particular phrasal verb from this category that like resonates with you right now?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Something that you could see yourself using, in your self-improvement journey.
Let me think. I think figure out, actually. I like that one because, well, I am always trying to figure out new ways to approach problems.
Yeah.
Or just learn from my experiences.
Absolutely.
It's a verb that shows that continuous growth.
Yes.
Which I find motivating, It never stops.
It never stops.
So I like that one.
It's like figure out becomes a reminder to just stay curious.
Right.
And embrace that whole learning process.
Yeah, exactly. And you never know what you're gonna learn next when you're trying to figure things out.
Exactly.
I like that.
That's a good one.
It really is amazing how much meaning these little verbs pack. They really make our communication so much more dynamic.
They do, yeah. It's like they unlock fluency somehow.
Yeah.
Make English sound, well, more natural.
Speaking of unlocking things,
Yeah.
I have a fun idea.
Okay.
How about we do a little quiz just to test what we know about these phrasal verbs so far?
Oh, I love a quiz.
Yeah.
Let's do it. See if our listeners have been paying attention.
Okay, first question. Imagine you're working on a project and it's just not going anywhere. You finally decide to just stop working on it completely.
Like all the time.
Right. So which phrasal verb would you use? Would you say that you gave up on the project or looked into it or maybe turned up at the meeting?
Okay, so we're looking for the verb that means to just like stop completely, abandon it.
Exactly. And the answer is
Gave up.
gave up. Yeah.
Yeah, you gave up on that project.
It definitely doesn't feel good, but
Yeah,
it happens. Sometimes things just don't work out.
it's a fact of life.
Yeah.
All right, ready for the next question?
Get me with it.
Okay, so imagine you're trying to understand like a really complex problem
Yeah.
and you want to get to the root of it, like all the little details.
Okay, so like you're really trying to solve it, not just scratch the surface.
Exactly, yeah. So which phrasal verb fits best here? Would you figure out the problem, go over the details, or run into a solution?
So this is all about being really analytical, right? Like really digging into the problem.
Yes, exactly. Thinking it through.
So the answer must be
Go over.
go over. That's right.
Yeah, you're going over all the details.
Okay, last question. You're getting ready to give a presentation
Okay.
and you want to practice it beforehand. Which verb describes that? Would you show up at the presentation, come up with a new idea, or maybe run through your speech?
This one is all about getting ready,
Yeah.
rehearsing, making sure you know everything.
Yeah. Making sure it all flows, all the pieces are in place.
Exactly. So the answer has to be
Run through.
run through.
Yeah.
You got to run through that presentation.
Make sure you're prepared for anything.
Exactly.
Well done, listeners. You guys are pros. You're really getting the hang of these verbs.
You're going to be fluent in no time.
But this is just the beginning. I mean, there's so much more out there, when it comes to phrasal verbs.
Oh yeah, so many. It's like a whole other world.
It is like another level of fluency.
It is.
So before we finish our deep dive today, I want to talk about how to actually make these 25 verbs part of your everyday English.
Yeah.
It's one thing to understand them,
Right.
but how do you actually use them naturally,
That's the real challenge. It's all about like bridging that gap between knowledge and actually applying it.
Yeah.
The good news is with phrasal verbs, like they're everywhere.
Yeah.
Just pay attention to how native speakers use them in conversations, in movies, and songs.
Yeah, that's good advice. Like just be more aware.
Be more aware. Yeah, you'll start to notice patterns and kind of pick up on the nuances.
Yeah, it's like immersive learning,
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment.
Yeah.
Try using these phrasal verbs in your own conversations.
Oh yeah, for sure.
You might stumble a bit at first,
Yeah, of course.
but that's okay. That's all part of the learning process.
Right, you're not going to get it perfect the first time.
Exactly. Yeah. But the more you practice, the more confident you'll become.
Of course. It's like anything, right? Practice makes perfect.
Exactly.
But sometimes just like jumping in can be a little overwhelming.
Yeah.
Do you have any tips to make the learning process a bit more, I don't know, organized?
Oh, absolutely. Like a great technique is to use flashcards.
Oh, yeah.
Like write the phrasal verb on one side and then maybe like an example sentence on the other.
Yeah, classic.
Classic, yeah. That way you're not just like memorizing the definition. You're actually seeing it in action.
Right. You see how it works in a sentence.
Exactly, yeah. Another good strategy is to keep like a phrasal verb journal.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Every time you encounter a new one, just jot it down.
Yeah, like your own personal dictionary.
Exactly. And you can add an example sentence too.
Yeah.
You'll be amazed at how quickly your vocabulary will grow.
Yeah, that's a great idea. Before we wrap up completely, I'm just curious, do you have like a go-to phrasal verb? One that you just use all the time?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
I think mine would probably be breakdown.
Oh, yeah.
It's so versatile. You can break down a problem, you can break down a concept, you can even break down a wall.
Yeah, it's true.
It just means to analyze something, make it more simple, make it more manageable.
Yeah, and it works in so many situations. I think that's what's so cool about phrasal verbs, right? Yeah. They're adaptable.
Yes.
And once you start using them, your English just sounds so much more natural.
It really does.
Yeah.
So just remember, this deep dive, this is just the beginning.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep practicing, and most importantly, have fun with it.
Yes. Learning should be fun.
It should be fun, yeah.
Yeah.
The more you enjoy it, the more you'll learn.
Absolutely. So as you go about your day-to-day, what phrasal verbs are you going to try to use?
Yeah, good question.
Will you brush up on your skills? Will you look out for some new opportunities?
I might try to dream up a new adventure.
Ooh, I like that one. The possibilities are endless.
They are. It's been so fun diving into the world of phrasal verbs with you.
It has been.
Happy learning, everyone.
And that's a wrap on our exploration of these fascinating little, bundles of words. We hope you feel inspired to embrace phrasal verbs, make them a part of your everyday English, because fluency is a journey, not a destination, right? And every step you take brings you closer to mastering this amazing language. Thanks for joining us.